Part 1, Euphoria, May 1945. New York Harbor. For 3 years, Robert Evans had dreamed of this skyline. In the mud of Normandy, in the frozen Ardennes forest, this image was the promise. Home. But as the ship slipped into the harbor, Robert felt something unexpected. Not joy. Pressure. His family was there. His mother crying. His father, stiff with pride. And Mary, his fiancée, holding a sign with his name. She ran into his arms. He held her, but his eyes were looking over her shoulder, scanning the crowd. A habit. A survival instinct. He was looking for threats. There were none. Just confetti and tears. The days that followed were a blur of backyard parties and neighborhood barbecues. Everyone wanted to shake his hand. Everyone wanted to hear stories. But the stories weren't for telling. Mr. Higgins from next door talked about Victory Gardens. Robert smiled and nodded. But the sound faded out. For a split second, he saw a different face, a dead German soldier on a road in Belgium. He blinked. The flash was gone. He had survived the bullets, the bombs, the frozen nights. But surviving the peace was going to be a different kind of war. At night, he lay awake in his childhood bed. The room was dark, quiet, too quiet. No mortar fire, no screaming, just the ticking of a clock. He stared at the ceiling, his hands gripping the sheets. Mary slept next to him, her back turned. He got up, walked to the window, looked out at the quiet, peaceful street. The streetlights were on. No blackout. It felt foreign. In his diary, he wrote, "Everyone keeps telling me how happy they are. I try to be happy, but I feel like I'm wearing someone else's skin. A part of me is still over there, in the mud, with the boys who didn't come back. I came home, but I left myself behind. The war was over. But for Robert Evans, and for millions like him, the hardest battle had just begun. The battle with the silence." Part 2, T.H.E. Quiet Storm, Autumn 1945, Ohio. The party stopped. The neighbors stopped calling. The war was old news now. Robert Evans went back to work. A clerk in an insurance office. The same job he had before the war. It felt like putting on a suit that no longer fit. Every morning, he sat at his desk pushing papers, numbers, forms. Nothing that mattered. In France, a single decision meant life or death. Here, the biggest crisis was a misplaced file. His coworkers complained about their bosses, their wives, their lawns. Robert listened and said nothing. Their problems seemed like whispers from another planet. At night, the war came back. He would wake up at 3 a.m., drenched in sweat, certain he was still in a foxhole. His hands would reach for a rifle that wasn't there. Mary would find him standing in the corner of the bedroom, pressed against the wall, eyes wide open, seeing something she couldn't see. She learned not to touch him when he was like that. The first time she tried, he almost broke her wrist before he realized where he was. He stopped sleeping in the bed. The mattress was too soft, too safe. He slept on the floor. It felt more honest. The anger came next. A slow burn that could ignite without warning. In the supermarket, a man accidentally bumped into him. Robert spun around, fists clenched, ready to fight. The man saw his eyes and backed away, apologizing. Robert stood there, trembling, hating himself. He went to a bar. Drank whiskey. He wasn't a drinker before the war. Now it was the only thing that turned off the pictures in his head. A fellow veteran sat next to him. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. They just drank. In silence. Together. Mary tried to reach him. She would ask about the war. He would shut down. She would touch his hand. He would flinch. She stopped trying. In his diary, Robert wrote, "There is a wall inside me. On the other side is everything I saw. Everything I did. Mary is on my side of the wall, but she can feel the cracks. She knows something is seeping through. I'm afraid one day the wall will collapse, and it will crush us both." Thanksgiving came. Fireworks in the town square. Robert heard the first explosion and hit the ground. In front of everyone. His mother cried. His father helped him up, whispering, "It's okay, son. It's just fireworks." But it wasn't okay. Nothing was okay. He was a hero. He just didn't feel like one anymore. The war was over. But for Robert Evans, the hardest battle had just begun. Part 3, THE Armless Heroes, Winter 1946, Chicago. Sergeant James Kowalski came home on a hospital ship. He had left for war with 2 strong arms. He came back without them. A German mortar near the Ardennes forest. 3 seconds of screaming metal. Then nothing. His mother waited at the door of their small apartment. When she saw him, she froze. The son who had hugged her goodbye 2 years ago now stood before her with empty sleeves pinned to his coat. She wanted to embrace him. He saw the hesitation. It lasted only a second, but he saw it. "Come in, Jimmy," she said. "I made soup." He learned to eat again. Soup was easy. A spoon held between his teeth. Steak was impossible. He stopped going to restaurants. The stares were worse than the hunger. The rehabilitation hospital was a warehouse of broken men. Men without legs. Men without faces. Men who would never see, never walk, never hold their children. The nurses were kind. The therapists were patient. But every morning, Jim woke up and forgot. For one blissful second, he would try to stretch. And then he would remember. The arms weren't there. He learned to write with a pen between his teeth. His first letter was to a girl named Helen. She had written him every week for 2 years. Love letters. Promise letters. When he came home, she came to visit once. She saw the empty sleeves. She said all the right things. She never came back. Jim didn't blame her. He blamed the mirror. Robert Evans visited him in March. The 2 men sat in the hospital garden. Jim's therapist had fitted him with hooks. He hated them. They made him look like a monster in a carnival. "You're lucky," Jim said. "You can still feel your fingers." Robert didn't know what to say. There was nothing to say. Sometimes at night, Jim continued, "I dream I still have them. I dream I'm back in the war, loading my rifle. And then I wake up, and I look at these." He lifted his hooks. "And I think maybe it would have been better if the mortar had taken my head instead." Robert reached for his friend. Jim pulled away. "Don't," he said. "I can't feel it anyway." That night, Jim tried to end it. He found a razor blade. He held it with his teeth. He pressed it against his wrist. But he couldn't find the right angle. The hooks wouldn't cooperate. A nurse found him on the bathroom floor, bleeding, crying, screaming at his own body for failing him one last time. He survived. He didn't know if that was a blessing or a curse. In his hospital file, a doctor wrote, "Patient exhibits severe depression, loss of limbs, loss of fiancé, loss of purpose. Prognosis uncertain." Jim Kowalski had survived the war, but surviving the peace was going to be a different kind of battle. Part 4, Statistics of Despair. America was building. New cars, new homes, new babies. The future was bright. But in the shadows, another statistic was growing. Robert Evans found a bar. Not a regular bar. A bar for veterans. The VFW Hall on 3rd Street. He went there for the first time on a rainy Tuesday. He stayed until closing. The place smelled of whiskey and cigarettes and something else. Something familiar. Grief. The men here didn't talk about the weather. They didn't talk about baseball. They talked about Omaha Beach. About the bulge. About friends who died in their arms. And when they stopped talking, they drank. Robert met Tom there. Tom flew B-17s over Germany. 25 missions. He had a wife and a baby girl at home. He hadn't slept in a bed since 1943. He slept in a closet. Small space. No windows. Safe. "I see their faces," Tom said one night. "The German fighters I shot down. They were kids, Bob. Just kids. They burned." Tom's hands shook constantly now. The doctors called it operational fatigue. Tom called it hell. Then there was Frank. Frank was a sailor. His destroyer was torpedoed off Guadalcanal. He floated in the Pacific for 3 days, holding onto debris, listening to sharks. He was the only survivor from his watch. Now he couldn't take a shower. The water closing over his face sent him into panic. He took baths. With the door open. His wife stood guard. The statistics were staggering. By 1946, over 400,000 veterans reported symptoms of what they called war neurosis. Thousands more never reported. Thousands more drowned their symptoms in bottles. Divorce rates tripled. Domestic violence cases flooded the courts. And the suicides. No one kept an official count, but the veterans knew. Every week, another name, another funeral, another Gold Star mother burying her son a second time. Robert heard about Sam. Sam was in his unit, survived D-Day, survived the Bulge, came home to a hero's welcome. 6 months later, his wife found him in the garage. The engine running, a garden hose from the exhaust to the window. No, just silence. Robert went to the funeral. Sam's mother grabbed his arm. He couldn't forget, she said. He told me about the smell of death. He said it was in his nose every minute. I told him to think of happy things. Was that wrong? Robert didn't know what to say. He still doesn't. That night, he wrote in his diary, "We won the war, but some of us are losing the peace, and no one is keeping score." The papers called it the greatest generation. But greatness was a heavy coat to wear when you were freezing inside. Part 5, The Home Front Battle. Robert Evans needed help. He knew it now. The nightmares were getting worse. The anger was getting harder to control. Mary was gone. He was alone. He decided to try the Veterans Administration. The building was massive. Rows of windows. American flags. It looked like a hospital. It felt like a factory. The line stretched around the block. Hundreds of men. Some in wheelchairs. Some missing limbs. Some like Robert, wounded in ways you couldn't see. They waited for hours. In the rain. No one complained. They had learned patience in places far worse than this. When Robert finally reached the front desk, a clerk looked at him through thick glasses. The clerk asked for papers. Robert handed over his discharge forms. The clerk flipped through them like they were grocery receipts. Mental consultation? The clerk said. That's section 12. Wait time is 6 months. 6 months. Robert thought about 6 months of nights. 6 months of waking up screaming. 6 months of drinking himself to sleep. He tried to explain. I can't sleep, he said. I see things. I get angry. I need someone to talk to. The clerk didn't look up. Son, there's men in this building who lost legs. Lost eyes. You still got your arms. You still got your legs. Be grateful. Be grateful. Robert felt something rise in his chest. The same feeling he had before a battle. Adrenaline. Rage. He gripped the counter. His knuckles went white. The clerk finally looked up and saw his eyes. Saw something that made him lean back. Next, the clerk called out, Part 6, Women ONTHE Frontline. Mary sat in a church basement. She never imagined herself here. 23 years old. A good Catholic girl from Ohio. Surrounded by strangers. This was a support group for wives of veterans. No one told her such things existed. She found it through a priest who saw her crying in the pews after Mass. There were 12 women in the circle. Different ages. Different towns. Same eyes. Tired eyes. Eyes that had seen too much watching. A woman named Doris spoke first. Her husband was a medic at Okinawa. He came home 6 months ago. He hadn't spoken in 4. Just sat in his chair. Staring. She would bring him food. He would eat. She would take the plate away. No words. Just silence. He used to sing, Doris said. In the car. In the shower. Now the house is so quiet I can hear the clock ticking in every room. Another woman, Helen, had a different story. Her husband beat her. Not every day. Just when the nightmares got bad. He would wake up screaming, see her next to him, and for one terrible second, she was the enemy. He always apologized after. Begged forgiveness. Cried like a child. She always forgave. What else could she do? The man I married died in France, Helen said. This man who lives in my house? I don't know him. But I love him. And I'm scared of him. Mary listened. She thought about Robert. about the night he almost broke her wrist, about the empty whiskey bottles, about the wall between them that kept getting thicker. She spoke, finally. Her voice cracked. I left him, Mary said. I loved him more than anything. But I left. Because I couldn't save him. And I was drowning too. The women nodded. They understood. No judgment. Just nods. The group leader, an older woman named Margaret whose son died at Iwo Jima, spoke softly. You can't pour from an empty cup, dear. Sometimes stepping back is the only way to survive. It doesn't mean you stop loving. It means you stop dying with them. Mary cried. For the first time in months. She cried for Robert. For herself. For all of them. That night, she wrote him a letter. Not angry. Not pleading. Just honest. I don't know if you'll ever read this. I don't know if you're even reading letters anymore. But I need you to know, I didn't leave because I stopped loving you. I left because I couldn't watch you disappear. I pray every night that you find your way back. And if you do, I'll be here, waiting. But I can't wait in the fire with you. It's burning us both. She mailed it. She didn't know if he would respond. Weeks passed. Nothing. Mary went back to the church basement. Week after week. She listened. She cried. She healed. Slowly. The women there taught her something important. That loving a hero didn't mean sacrificing yourself. That compassion without boundaries was just another kind of wound. They were the forgotten soldiers, fighting a war no one saw. On a front line called home, Robert walked out of the building. He stood on the steps, shaking. He had faced machine guns. He had faced mortar fire. He had never felt so defeated. That night, he wrote a letter to his congressman. He wrote about the man he served with, about Sam in the garage, about Tom sleeping in a closet, about Jim with his hooks. He wrote for 3 hours. He poured everything onto the page. 3 months later, he received a reply, a form letter. It thanked him for his service. It assured him that the Veterans Administration was committed to helping all veterans. It invited him to fill out the attached questionnaire. Robert threw it in the trash. He realized something that day. The war had been fought by young men, but the peace was being managed by bureaucrats. And the bureaucrats had never heard a mortar shell. The bureaucrats had never seen a friend's head explode. The bureaucrats didn't understand that some wounds don't bleed. They just ache, forever. In his diary, Robert wrote, I fought for my country. Now I have to fight my country for the right to heal. And I'm running out of strength for both. Part 7, THE German Perspective, Hamburg, Germany. Hans Mueller walked through ruins. The city he grew up in was gone. Buildings reduced to skeletons. Streets buried under rubble. The smell of dust and decay everywhere. He had seen this before. In Stalingrad. In Tunisia. But that was war. This was home. Hans was 26. He had been a soldier since he was 19. France. Russia. North Africa. Captured in Tunisia. Spent 2 years in a prisoner of war camp in Texas. He remembered Texas well. The electric lights. The hamburgers. The farmers who treated him like a human being. Now he was back. In the country he had fought for. It looked like the surface of the moon. He found his family's apartment building. Or what was left of it. A crater. Some twisted pipes. No mother. No father. No sister. Gone. The Red Cross told him they died in the firebombing of 1943. 3 years ago. He never got the letter. Hans found work clearing rubble. It was the only job available. He worked alongside other former soldiers. They didn't talk much. What was there to say? They loaded bricks onto carts. They earned a few marks. They ate bread. They survived. At night, Hans lay on a cot in a refugee shelter. 50 men in one room, snoring, coughing, crying. Some screamed in their sleep. Just like the American veterans. Just like Robert Evans. The war followed them too. Hans thought about Texas often. About the farmer who taught him to drive a tractor. About the Christmas dinner the church ladies brought. About the guard who gave him a cigarette and said, after the war, maybe we'll be friends. He had laughed at that then. It seemed impossible. Now, standing in the ruins of Hamburg, he wondered, Maybe the guard was right. Maybe the war was over. But the peace felt just as heavy. One night, Hans found a pencil. He wrote in a small notebook he had kept since his capture. I am home, but home is gone. The Americans have their problems too. I saw it in their eyes. The same emptiness. The same silence. They have food and lights and cars. We have rubble and hunger. But inside, we are the same. We are all carrying dead men on our backs. He closed the notebook. He thought about Robert Evans, a man he never met, a man on the other side of the ocean, a man who probably hated him once. Hans wondered if Robert was sleeping tonight. Probably not. Neither was he. Two soldiers. Two sides. One wound. Part 8. THE Turning Point. 3 years since the war ended. Robert Evans was still fighting. He had tried the whiskey. He had tried the silence. He had tried forgetting. Nothing worked. The faces kept coming. The dreams kept coming. The anger kept coming. Then one Sunday, an old man stopped him on the street. A priest from the local church. Father Michael. He had buried Robert's mother 2 years ago. He had seen Robert at the funeral, standing like a statue, not crying, not speaking. I have a room in the basement, Father Michael said. Every Tuesday night. Some men gather. They talk. You should come. Robert almost laughed. Talk? What good was talk? He had tried talking. To Mary. To doctors. To himself. Nothing helped. But Tuesday came, and Robert found himself standing outside the church basement. He could hear voices. Low murmurs. He almost left. His hand was on the door. He thought about Sam in the garage. About Jim in the hospital. About Tom in his closet. He opened the door. 12 men sat in a circle. Folding chairs. Fluorescent lights. Coffee in paper cups. They looked up when he entered. No one smiled. No one waved. Just nods. That was enough. Robert sat down. No one asked his name. No one asked his rank. No one asked what he did in the war. They just sat. And then, one by one, they started talking. A man named Eddie spoke first. He was a machine gunner at Okinawa. He hadn't spoken about it in 3 years. Tonight, he spoke for an hour. About the screams. About the mud. About the friend who died next to him, calling for his mother. Eddie cried. No one looked away. Then it was Robert's turn. The room went quiet. He felt the pressure. The same pressure he felt on the troop ship. But different. Safer. He told them about the German boy. The one from the Hitler Youth. Maybe 15 years old. He had thrown a grenade into Robert's foxhole. Robert shot him. The boy fell. Robert crawled over to him. The boy was still alive. He looked at Robert with young eyes. Scared eyes. He said something in German. Robert didn't understand. Then the boy died. I think about him every night, Robert said. I think about his mother. I think about who he might have become. I killed a child. And I don't know how to live with that. The room was silent. Then a man across the circle spoke. I know, he said. We all know. And somehow, that was enough. That night, Robert walked home different, lighter. The weight was still there. But it was shared now. He wasn't carrying it alone. In his diary, he wrote, For 3 years, I thought I was the only one. The only one who couldn't forget. The only one who couldn't move on. Tonight, I learned something. There are thousands of us. We are not broken. We are just carrying something too heavy for one man. But maybe together, we can hold it. The war was still inside him. But for the first time, he could see a path out. A path through the silence. One word at a time. Part 9, THE Legacy of Silence, a new decade. A new war. Robert Evans watched the newsreels with a glass in his hand. Korea. Young boys shipping out. Young boys coming back in boxes. The same newsreels. The same lies. The same silence waiting for them at home. He had changed. 5 years of Tuesday nights in the church basement. 5 years of talking. 5 years of listening. The nightmares came less often now. The anger still flared, but he could control it. Most days. Mary came back. Slowly, carefully. She started with coffee at the diner, then Sunday dinners. Then, one night, she never left. They married again, quietly. No church, no party, just a judge and two witnesses. They knew what they were getting into this time. In 1951, their son was born. John Robert Evans, Johnny. Robert held his son for the first time and felt something he thought had died in France. Hope. But hope came with fear. What kind of father would he be? What would he pass on? The blood? The nightmares? The silence? Johnny grew. He was a good kid. Curious. Brave. Too brave. Robert watched him climb trees and jump fences and fight with neighbor kids. He saw himself in the boy, and it terrified him. Robert taught Johnny things. How to fish. How to fix a car. How to stand up straight. But he couldn't teach him the most important thing. How to feel. Every time Johnny cried, Robert froze. Every time Johnny showed fear, Robert looked away. He didn't know how to comfort. No one had ever taught him. Mary tried to fill the gaps. She hugged Johnny. She kissed his scraped knees. She told him it was okay to be scared. But Johnny saw his father's silence. He learned that men don't cry. Men don't talk. Men just carry it. When Johnny was 7, Robert took him hunting. First time. A rifle in the boy's hands. Johnny was excited. Robert was calm. Too calm. He showed Johnny how to load. How to aim. How to squeeze, not pull. Johnny shot his first deer. A small doe. The animal fell. Johnny ran to it. It was still alive. Its eyes were wide, scared. Johnny looked at his father. What do we do, Dad? Robert took the rifle. He put the barrel behind the deer's ear. He pulled the trigger. The deer stopped moving. Johnny didn't speak for the rest of the day. That night, Mary found him crying in his room. I killed something, Mom. It looked at me and I killed it. Mary held him. She didn't know what to say. She looked at the door. Robert stood there, watching, silent. She saw something in his eyes, recognition. He had seen that look before. In a different boy. A German boy. A boy with scared eyes who never went home. Robert walked away. He sat in a dark living room. He thought about the war. About the faces. About the son he was raising in his own image. In his diary, he wrote, I wanted to give Johnny a better life. A normal life. But I don't know what normal is. I only know survival. I only know silence. I'm teaching him to be a man the only way I know how. By teaching him not to feel. And I'm watching it work. It breaks my heart. But it's the only language I speak. The war was over. But it was still winning. One generation at a time. Part 10, Reconciliation 40 years since the war ended. Robert Evans was 74 years old. His hair was white. His hands shook sometimes. He sat on the porch of his Ohio home, watching the corn grow. Mary was gone. 5 years now. Cancer took her quietly, the way she did everything. Johnny was a man. 44 years old. A lawyer in Chicago. He had 2 children of his own. A boy and a girl. He called every Sunday. He visited on holidays. He never asked his father about the war. Some silences become habits. Then one day, a letter arrived. Cream-colored envelope. Foreign stamps. Robert opened it with trembling hands. Dear Mr. Evans, I am writing from Hamburg, Germany. My name is Hans Mueller. I was a soldier in the Africa Corps. I was a prisoner in Texas in 1943. I have thought about America every day since. A mutual friend gave me your address. I am organizing a reunion. Veterans from both sides. In Normandy. On the beaches. We want to walk together where we once fought. We want to shake hands where we once shot at each other. I hope you will come. Your enemy, your brother Hans. Robert read the letter 3 times. He put it down. He picked it up again. He thought about the German boy. The one with the scared eyes. The one who died in his foxhole. He called Johnny. 3 months later, Robert stood on Omaha Beach. The tide was low. The sand was smooth. Tourists walked where soldiers had died. Children built castles where men had bled. Hans Mueller was easy to spot. An old man in a gray suit, standing alone, staring at the water. Robert walked toward him, slowly, his cane sinking into the sand. When he reached Hans, they stood side by side, silent, watching the waves. Finally, Hans spoke. I was in the bunkers up there, he said, pointing to the cliffs. I was 19. I shot at boys your age. I missed. Thank God I missed. Robert nodded. I was in a landing craft. Different beach. Different day. I didn't miss. Silence again. Then Hans turned. He held out his hand. I am sorry, he said, for everything. Robert looked at the hand. An old hand, spotted, wrinkled. The hand of a man who had once been the enemy. He took it. So am I, Robert said. They stood there. Two old men, holding hands like old friends. The waves washed over their shoes. Neither cared. That night, at the reunion dinner, Robert sat with Germans and Americans. They ate together, drank together. Some cried, some laughed. They showed photographs of grandchildren. They talked about farms and businesses and bad knees and high blood pressure. Ordinary things. Human things. A German veteran stood up. He raised his glass. To the enemies we were, he said. To the friends we became. Everyone drank. Robert thought about his life. The war. The silence. Mary. Johnny. The church basement. The long, hard road back to himself. He thought about the German boy. The one with the scared eyes. He realized something for the first time. That boy wasn't a soldier. He was a child. Just like Johnny. Just like his grandson. A child sent to die for a madman's dream. Robert stood up. His voice was shaky. I killed a boy once, he said. A German boy. I've carried him with me every day since. I don't know his name. I don't know his face anymore. But I know he was somebody's son. Somebody's brother. Maybe someday, somebody's father. He looked at Hans. Tonight, I want to let him go. I want to believe he forgives me. I want to believe we all forgive each other. Hans stood up. He walked over to Robert. He put a hand on his shoulder. He forgives you, Hans said. We all do. The room was silent. Then someone started clapping. Soon everyone was clapping. Americans, Germans, enemies, friends, survivors. Robert sat down. He felt lighter. The weight he had carried for 40 years finally lifted. The next morning, Robert walked on the beach alone. The sun was rising, gold on the water. He thought about Mary, about Johnny, about the grandson who would never know what war felt like. He thought about Hans, about the bunkers, about the boys who never made it home. He took a deep breath. The salt air filled his lungs. He smiled. In his pocket was a small stone. He had picked it up from Omaha Beach. A piece of history. A piece of hell. He would take it home. Put it on Mary's grave. Let her know he was finally okay. The war was over. Really over. Robert Evans walked back up the beach. An old man. A veteran. A survivor. The silence was no longer empty. It was full. Full of memories. Full of grief. Full of peace. It was enough.